This video will show you how effective the 2.2 rimfire rifle can be for rabbit control. I will guide you through the basic requirements for applying for a certificate, show you basic security guidelines and tips on what equipment to buy, showing the rifle being sighted in and then being put into use carrying out rabbit control in daytime and nighttime hours using simple but effective methods. The Firearms Act 1968 requires a certificate to be granted, provided that the applicant is not prohibited from possessing firearms and that the Chief Officer of Police is satisfied he is fit to be entrusted with them. Here is an application form for a firearms certificate. A firearms certificate is granted by the police force in the area where the applicant normally lives, so to apply for one you must obtain this prescribed application form. This is Form 101 from your local police authority. Download them from the local police force website. You can request them by phoning the firearms department direct or collect them in person from a local police station. The responsibility and safety to store firearms and ammunition is normally discharged by installing a firearms security cabinet. All modern cabinets conform to BS 7558, which is the approved standard of security that meets Home Office guidelines. Ammunition should be stored in a separate lockable container, and most gun cabinets designed for Section 1 firearms have an integral ammunition container. The cabinet should be roll bolted to a solid brick wall and situated out of view from people both inside and outside of the building. 5-lever mortise deadlock should be fitted to all final exit doors and security devices on all ground floor windows. I also advise that you do not advertise the fact that you have firearms on your premises and you keep them as low profile as you can. Some new firearms licence holders boast about the fact that they are privileged with the grant of a certificate and find the need to tell the world. This in itself can attract undesired visitors to your home. The grant of a certificate for hunting purposes. The applicant needs to demonstrate good reason for the firearms requested. Good reason can only be satisfied by the applicant supplying written permission from the landowner or person who holds the shooting rights where they have permission to use the firearm that they've requested. Providing the land is suitable and the firearms requested are suitable for the purpose that you've requested them for, a firearms certificate may be granted, authorising specific firearms and ammunition used for the required purpose on the land deemed suitable by the Chief Officer of Police. Provided that the proposed land is considered suitable, a newly granted certificate will normally be limited to the piece of land specified, plus any other land deemed suitable by the Chief Officer of Police for the area where the land is situated. In most cases, establishing whether the land is regarded suitable or not should not present any difficulty. If there is already a firearms certificate on issue for the land in question, covering a similar class of firearms, then it should already have been deemed suitable. A certificate with fewer conditions, commonly known as an open certificate, will entitle you to shoot on land which you, the licence holder, have permission to do so. This is normally available to the more experienced firearms user. So when you have gained sufficient experience, then you can consider seeking a certificate with less restrictions. All certificates should enable you to practice on zero. You need to recognise where public footpaths are, highways and dwelling houses. The land will need to have suitable backdrops so you always know where your bullet's going to end up. Suitable backdrops are so important. When you're about to take a shot, it has to be a conscious decision. You need to know what's between you and your target and also what lies behind it. Also take into account wind speed and direction. You must always pay attention. When you're out shooting, don't shoot at hard surfaces, and this includes water. Water might not seem like a hard surface, but it is. The density of it makes it pretty dangerous. It has a tendency to allow bullets to ricochet off it. They just fly off and go in an unintended direction. When you're doing rabbit control, you need to build up a good reputation so you can acquire enough land to rotate your shooting, as it would be no good going to the same place all the time. The best way to do this is demonstrate safety all the time and respect the wishes of farmers and gamekeepers. Word soon gets round to other landowners if you do a good job and conduct yourself in a decent manner. Remember when you're in the countryside that you can come across walkers, horse riders and such like, so you've got to be alert at all times. These people may not be on the designated public footpaths. Reason to possess a firearm is very important, but it's not just all about going out and getting a few fields and a bit of land so you can have a certificate. The land has to be worthy of justifying the rifle of calibre you apply for, and it needs to have a problem with rabbits or vermin that you can't control effectively with the suggested firearm. Remember, firearms aren't toys, and they should be treated with respect at all times. When you first receive your firearm certificate, there will be no weapon shown as possessed. You will have the authorization to purchase the firearms you requested and were agreed by the police. There's lots of rifles to choose from, some new and some second hand. Your local firearms dealer will be happy to advise you on the best choice of rifle. My choice was a CZ452 16-inch barrel silhouette model. This has a synthetic stock and blued finish on all metal surfaces. It has a two-piece safety at the rear of the bolt and weighs just under 6 pounds in weight. I have mounted a simple 3x9x50 Leupold scope on this with decent double locking scope mounts. The scope is best mounted as low to the barrel of the rifle as possible without actually touching the barrel. I have fitted a SAC sound moderator to this that is proofed and suitable for firearms. If you do want a moderator, you must state this on your firearms application form when you first apply for a certificate. The bolt that is supplied with this rifle should always be removed when the rifle is not being used and stored separately from the rifle. These rifles come with a 5-shot magazine as standard, but 10-shot magazines can be bought separate. The 10-shot magazine is a more practical magazine when shooting rabbits in big numbers, saving time having to reload. There are various brands of ammunition available to use, but personally I find the Winchester Subsonic the best. Here are some examples of Subsonics I have tried over the years, and they do not seem to be as consistent as Winchesters. These CCIs are slightly cheaper, also these Remingtons. I've never cared much for either of these two brands. Before you try to zero your scope in precisely, make sure that it's somewhere near before you take it into the field. You don't want bullets flying all over the place. This can be done using a bore sighter, which is an inexpensive device available from most gun shops. Zero your scope in at the distance you would normally be shooting rabbits at, meaning it's no good having your scope set to 50 yards if the average shooting range when you're controlling rabbits is 70 yards. If the land you have acquired is disturbed on a regular basis, chances are you will have to shoot rabbits at longer distances. I am zeroing this scope at 50 metres, that is actually measured, not a guess. This is over 54 yards. To begin with, choose an area that is quite level and has a good backdrop. If you do attach a target to a tree, make sure it's not going to create too much damage. This tree I am using here is pretty much dead and it's due to be felled. If you can't find any suitable item to fix a target to, I suggest you take a bullet trap with you so that you don't destroy trees, fence posts and gates. Once you do have your scope somewhere near zero, you can begin to fine tune it, using the windage and elevation on the scope to do this. These targets I use are simply printed on A4 paper. Each circle is about the size of a 50p coin. Technically any bullet that hits the red in this target will be accurate enough to kill a rabbit by shooting it in the head. Get the zero as close to the centre of your target as you can, take into account that we're using 2.2 Subsonics. They are cheap, mass-produced ammunition, so you will find slight variations in zero from shot to shot. Welcome to the world of cheap ammunition. Even if you clamp this rifle in a bench rest, which we have tried before, you will still get a variation in zero. Like I say, this is due to the cheap, mass-produced ammunition. Once you're happy with your efforts to zero, and you feel like the rifle is shooting accurately, you can then proceed to rabbit shooting. The rabbit control is being carried out on private estates and farmland in the northeast of England. The estates are heavily infested with rabbits, causing damage to land by burrowing holes and making land unsuitable for certain types of stock to graze on, by eating grass that farm stock graze on, causing financial loss to farmers. This year there's been one incident where rabbits have burrowed near poles that hold overhead power lines up and made the pole fall, causing power loss to residential homes, and not to mention the expense to repair the damage. It has been estimated that 9 rabbits can eat as much grass as 1 sheep, so they do have a dramatic impact on grazing land. The damage caused by rabbits in the UK is estimated in the region of £100 million annually. In the UK, the rabbit population is around 40 million, and it grows around 1% each year. Rabbits breed all the year round, but the main time of breeding activity is early spring till the end of summer. Usually 4 to 10 young are born in a litter, but a litter of 24 has been recorded. They are breeding age around 3 to 4 months. One breeding pair of rabbits can multiply from 90 to 100 rabbits throughout the year in ideal conditions. So it's very easy to understand the amount of damage these rabbits can do if they are left uncontrolled. They can turn a perfectly good grazing area into unsuitable land in a very short period of time. Once they become established in an area, they are more difficult to eradicate. I am going to be shooting these rabbits from a vehicle while driving the fields, but before I begin, let me bring to your attention the risks of driving fields around early springtime. You must be aware that this time of year there is a possibility that ground nesting birds are rearing their young in places you would normally carry out rabbit control. As you can see, these chicks can be hard to see, and they can easily be run over if you're driving the fields. I would avoid meadow fields and set aside areas until the birds have finished rearing their young, and the chicks are big enough to move out of your way. Some estates rely on wild game birds breeding, and they never buy poults in. Disturbing these is a guaranteed way to lose your permission. So before you drive the fields, check with the gamekeepers and the farmers to make sure it's all right. Just before we begin, remember in wet conditions it may not be a good idea to drive the fields, because if you get stuck or start wheel spinning you'll cause more damage than the rabbits. The idea is to preserve grass and crops and not to destroy the fields with a vehicle. Headshot rabbits do kick around after they've been shot, but all the movement after the bullet impact is the nervous system shutting down. They are dead immediately. You'll need to get used to this action. They sometimes leap in the air, dive in circles, lie on their back with their legs kicking, or sometimes just drop down dead without moving. This is not just confined to rabbits. Everything will have this reaction when a bullet hits the brain. I've seen it loads with large game that has been shot. They're gone, they have no eye reflex, but their legs still keep kicking for a few minutes. Shooters and viewers must realise this is a reflex action only. Man is the rabbit's main enemy, since it has been regarded a major pest for the last 200 years. Rabbits cause a lot of damage to crops, gardens and the countryside in general. Earlier this century, when the rabbit population was much larger, they caused such extensive damage to crops and trees they were included in the Pest Act 1954. Around 1953, a flea-carried virus called myxomatosis was introduced to the wild rabbit population. This killed more than 95% of Britain's rabbits. Myxomatosis is a distressing disease affecting the eyes and the brain. The dramatic reduction in rabbit numbers also caused a decline in the numbers of foxes, buzzards and other predators, as well as affecting the growth of vegetation. Unwanted plants such as gorse, bramble and coarse grasses were encouraged to grow. However, rabbits once again are more common now, having developed a resistance to the virus, although populations in some areas occasionally get affected by new strains of this virus. Even though rabbits once again are causing damage to crops and forest plantations, they are providing predators with much needed food. Also, without rabbits, much of our downland and cliff tops would be overgrown with gorse, bramble and hawthorn scrubs. Rabbits suppress the growth of shrubs by nibbling the growing shoots. This, resulting in turf, encourages the growth of low-grown plants. In turn, these small flowering plants attract many butterflies, and short grass is suitable for other insects such as ants. The insects in turn attract many species of birds. Cliff tops are not suitable for crops, so rabbits are tolerated in these areas and actually do more good than harm. Rabbits are mainly nocturnal, emerging from their burrows at dusk and dawn, although on warm sunny days and in undisturbed places they may be out during broad daylight. Feeding takes place close to the warren, so that the vegetation around is kept short by grazing. The rabbits, having many enemies, is always on alert for danger. If a rabbit spots danger, it warns others by thumping with a hind foot. A flash of white from under its tail as it runs to the burrow also acts as an alarm system. The rabbit's prominent eyes are set so it can see over a wide area. Rabbits are exceptionally good at breeding. In 1 year, a doe can produce more than 20 offspring, and many of these will breed themselves when they're only 4 months old. So one breeding pair of rabbits can result in a population increase of over 100 rabbits in one season. Spring and summer is the main reproductive period, but this can start in January. The offspring, known as kits, are born in special nests made by the doe, which is at a dead end in the burrow, often separate from the main warren. The doe makes a nest from grass and straw and lines it with fur plucked from her chest. After a gestation period between 28 and 31 days, a litter of 4 to 10 kits is born, but a litter of 24 has been recorded. At birth they are blind, deaf and hairless. They are hardly able to move for the first week. Their mother visits them for only a few minutes every day, and that's to suckle them. Then she seals off the nesting chamber with soil. By the 8th day the young are covered with fur, and 2 days later their eyes open. By the 16th day they have ventured out of the burrow and started eating solid food. They are weaned and independent in about 30 days. The mother would have already remated and be expecting another litter. This prolific breeding is normally balanced by many deaths caused by predators. Road traffic, shooting and trapping. Apart from man, the rabbit has many predators. These include foxes, badgers, stoats, weasels, buzzards and cats. Some places have huge, well-established rabbit warrens, similar to this one here. This is an old pit heap. It can be worth your while just to sit quietly and pick the rabbits off as they begin to emerge from the warren. This warren also provides a great backdrop. Because it's so steep, most of the shot rabbits fall right down to the bottom, making them easy to pick up. Sitting quietly like this near a good established warren can produce 25 or 30 good rabbits towards your catch, so it's worth doing it. I strongly advise that you obtain some third-party liability insurance that will cover you in the event of something going wrong when you're out shooting. There's a number of places to acquire the insurance from. Most are set up through shooting organisations acting as brokers. I find the National Gamekeepers Organisation membership to be a good choice. It's priced fairly at about £30 a year. The only modification I've done to this rifle, which I didn't mention at the start of this video, I've installed a trigger kit into it. The kit itself is very simple. It basically consists of replacing the main trigger spring and putting a couple of shims in. I was able to go from a £5 factory trigger pull to a £2 trigger pull, which makes a big difference to the overall performance of this rifle. Without going into this too much, unless you're 100% confident to carry out a trigger modification, I suggest you have any work like this done by a gunsmith. If you do a trigger modification wrong, the gun could start accidentally discharging and become unsafe. It'll also avoid any warranties on a new rifle. Sometimes rabbits are sitting looking away from you, so if you shoot it it'll be no good, because all that you can really see is a body shot. A little squeak noise makes them put the head up and have a look, then you can go for the head shot. Some landowners might be concerned that by allowing rabbits to be controlled by the 2.2 might alarm stock and cause problems, but I can assure you that the stock is not bothered, because these are a nice quiet round to use. Generally the stock is just curious to see what's going on. This clip shows the reaction of stock as the rabbit has just been shot. In some areas where the rabbits are disturbed on a regular basis with poachers and the less experienced rabbit catchers, the rabbits are spooky and just one shot can clear the field, making the control of them more difficult and a lot more drawn out. Realistically, after you shoot a place, you wanted to give it a 2-week rest so that the rabbits don't become educated and run off you in the slightest noise. You will need to have a good understanding between yourself and landowners so that each visit you make you have maximum impact to the rabbit population. Some landowners allow numerous shooters on to control the rabbits. I find that results in the rabbits becoming jumpy and spooky, so more run off and less get shot. Personally, I would decline to attend land where multiple shooters attend. Some clips have been slowed down to show you the results when a subsonic makes contact with a rabbit's head. This will give you an idea of how humane this method is, and there's no unnecessary suffering. I have left the soundtrack in place so you can actually hear the bullet leave the rifle. Once again, I've slowed these clips down to give you an idea of what happens when the bullet hits the rabbit's head. The death is instant, but the reflex action after death makes them kick around a little. Getting good permission for rabbit shooting is not the easiest thing to obtain. You have to be prepared to go out on numerous occasions asking farmers and gamekeepers for their permission. Don't get disheartened too quickly, because a lot of good places you will see will already have people that take care of the rabbits. Some places have syndicates on that do the rabbits themselves, some have shooters like myself that have attended for many years, and some landowners simply don't want anyone on the place. This might be because they've had a bad past experience with shooters coming on. If you keep persevering and travelling a bit further afield, you will eventually find something that fits the bill. When you're out looking for permission, always approach farmers and landowners smartly dressed and not in full camo looking like an urban terrorist. First impressions matter, and it's an early way of showing respect. Approach landowners alone and don't turn up team-handed with loads of friends going to the door. Keep your conversation polite and very brief, as farmers and keepers are usually busy and they don't have time to talk for any length of time. A good idea is to have some business cards made up so you can hand them out. And I also take with me a pre-typed permission form that only needs an address and a signature to complete. It's also a good idea to carry your firearms certificate with you and your insurance details in case anyone given permission needs to view them. When you do get permission, I wouldn't start taking different friends to the place all the time. If you have a shooting partner that works with you, that's fine, but taking many different people never looks good. Landowners need to familiarise themselves with regular faces and don't like to see random strangers who they have no clue who they are or what they're doing on their place. The landowner would have given you the permission and not all your mates. Try and work and act responsible at all times, and don't turn your permission into a place for social gatherings. When you're out shooting, you as a certificate holder is the only person that can handle or use your firearms when out shooting on places you have permission. The only time a non-certificate holder may use a firearm is when the firearm certificate holder actually owns or occupies the land. An occupier includes the tenant farmer or the person that holds the shooting rights. They must be with you at all times, and this does not mean in the next field, it means alongside you. But you, as only a person having permission to shoot rabbits on the place, is not the person that holds the shooting rights and cannot allow anyone else to handle or use the firearm. Some shooters are not aware about certain points relating to firearms law and legislation and just take most things for granted. But it is your responsibility as a shooter and certificate holder to learn current firearms legislation and stay within the law. Ignorance is never accepted as a defence if anything goes wrong. Unfortunately, you don't get a book when you get your certificate telling you all the do's and don'ts. If you are unsure about any points of firearms law, it's best to ask your local firearms department for advice. The rabbits need to be gutted quite quick after they've been shot so the guts don't gas up and begin to contaminate the meat. I will show you later in this video the way I remove the guts and prepare the rabbits. When you're transporting shot rabbits in your vehicle, don't pile them up in a heap or bundle them into sacks, because they'll just start to heat up. You need to transport them so air can flow around the individual rabbits. This is so the shot rabbits lose their body heat quickly and they begin to cool. Any rabbits that are allowed to heat up and transport have been badly shot, or when the stomach or intestines has been punctured, must never enter the human food chain. They must be disposed of because they will definitely be contaminated. Farmers and landowners have allowed you to take care of the rabbit problem, so they do expect you to kill rabbits and not just the ones big enough for you to sell. They know even young rabbits still eat their grass and cause damage, so to carry out the job efficiently you'll be required to kill rabbits of all sizes and not leave them till they grow. Once they see that you start farming rabbits for your own benefit, you're more than likely going to be replaced with someone that'll do the job the way the farmers want it done. The smaller half to 3/4 grown rabbits are nice and tender to eat, so I don't have a problem shooting them as they provide a good meat to put into cooking for myself and my family. Some people begin rabbit shooting and believe that the landowner should be paying them for their services. Well, it's a nice thought, but in the real world there's plenty of people that will do it for free, and that includes me. You can generate enough revenue from the sales of the rabbits if you know how to carry out the job effectively. And of course you have enough places where you can shoot decent numbers of rabbits. Your main outlay for this job is fuel, vehicle running costs and repairs, plus ammunition. I've seen a lot of people over the years try this as a means of making a living and fail, either because they haven't got the right land to shoot, or they can't sell the rabbits after they get them. This job can be hard at times because you have certain things against you, like weather conditions not allowing you to go out, working around crop and grass growth, and the dreaded myxomatosis disease rendering rabbits no good to sell. I have done this for years now, and I do have enough places for me to make a living from it, but I still remember in the early years when I never made anything for weeks and even months due to the lack of good rabbit shooting ground. In this section I'm shooting rabbits at dusk and dark. The only lighting used is the headlights of the vehicle. Some footage may look a little bit brighter than it actually is due to the camera's low light ability. When you're driving the fields at night, make sure that you know your surroundings before you begin. Visit the land in daytime hours and become accustomed with the obvious safety needs, like footpaths, bridleways, horizons, dwelling places, and also any marsh areas or soft areas, places you would get stuck. The same safety rules apply at night, but you do need to even give them more consideration and be more alert, because it's dark and your vision is reduced dramatically. And just because it's dark, don't think that people won't be about. They might be, so be very careful. Lamping from a vehicle can produce good numbers. As a rule, the rabbits will see and hear tractors and quads on a daily basis, so the sound of a vehicle does not pose a threat. The possibility of people being about, authorised or not, is always there, so always think this before you pull the trigger. When you're shooting at night with an artificial light, do not just shoot at illuminated eyes and think that it might be a rabbit. You've got to fully identify the quarry before you take the shot. Make sure that you actually do see a rabbit, it's not just a reflection of an eye. Always be careful to make sure you're shooting at the intended quarry and you're not just shooting at something that you might think is a rabbit. If you're undecided or not sure, do not take the shot. As a matter of courtesy, inform the local police who you are and what you are doing. It saves police resources and time if they know about it in advance, and they have the choice to phone you instead of having to come out and look for you to see what's going on. When you're out shooting rabbits at night, even from a vehicle using the headlights, I would advise that you take along a shooting partner in case anything goes wrong in the field. If you do happen to get stuck in the field at night, it's always easier to have some help. You may need some help to locate shot rabbits, because they can be tricky to find, especially when you shoot a few from one position. Simple tasks like opening and closing gates, spotting holes and soft spots in the field, it's made easier when you've got help. 2 sets of eyes is always better than 1 at night. At night everything looks different, and you'll be surprised when driving the fields and you're focused on rabbit shooting how easy it is to drop into a pothole or hit a soft spot. I carry a lightweight hand winch with me in case I get stuck, but if you're by yourself, working a winch and holding a ground anchor at the same time would be a virtual impossibility. You can see how effective this form of rabbit control is, and how you can get big numbers in a short period of time. These two tools are economical to use with the ammunition being cheap, and used correctly they can have a good cash return. In my opinion, no other rifle comes close to these to use for serious rabbit control. I have slowed this clip down here so that once again you can see the impact of the bullet. This rabbit was looking away and I couldn't see much of its head. At night the sound of you shooting a rabbit might disturb other rabbits, but at night daytime shooting they react in a different way. Like this clip here, after the first rabbit is shot, another one runs from alongside me and presents itself close to the one that has just been shot. This reaction is not uncommon, and even though you're in the field with your engine running and your headlights on, they're still quite docile and stay in sight and range. At night you must stay alert and look for rabbits that are clapped. Once the grass is a few inches long, they think they are well hidden and you can't see them. Some fields that haven't been disturbed for a long time produce dozens of rabbits that just sit like this at night, making the control of them very effective and feasible. This is why it's no good keep going to the same place too often, as you'll soon educate the rabbits, and it'll not take long until seeing rabbits sitting like this will be a thing of the past for you. In this clip I need to reposition the vehicle because there's another rabbit to the left. As you see, they're not even alarmed by the sound of the engine. The good thing about shooting at night is that the rabbits feel more secure, and generally they just sit just nice so you can get a good clean shot. If you're intending shooting rabbits in big amounts and making an impact on the population, nighttime shooting can produce some really big numbers. Even places where rabbits have a tendency to run off in the daytime, shooting them at night will be totally different and you will get much more. The rabbits should be gutted as quick as possible after they've been shot. This method here is the push gutting method, where no incision is made with a knife. You simply begin to squeeze the guts towards the rear of the rabbit until they exit, starting at the rib area and working down until all the guts is under pressure at the rear of the rabbit, and a final push will bring them out all in one go. This is a nice clean way of removing the guts, and it comes into its own in the warm weather, because you have no split made with a knife, so the risk of fly contamination to the meat is reduced. I will just go through this with you again. So start squeezing the guts from the rib cage down once under pressure. One final push brings them out all in one go. As you notice here, nothing's burst open, no contamination inside that rabbit. Everything's nice and clean. Now we have a little exit wound where everything came out, but no split in the rabbit, reducing any contamination from flies or insects. On some big buck rabbits this method can prove to be a little difficult until you master the method. Alternatively, you can use the standard way to cut your rabbits, and that's with a knife. For this method you don't need a big clumsy knife. A short pocket knife is more than suitable, as you're only using the tip of the blade. I always hold the rabbit by the front legs and cut down using only the tip of the blade, so that you don't nick any of the intestines. I've seen some people destroy rabbits when trying to gut them, by sticking knives right in and ripping the front of the rabbit open along with the guts. This causes instant contamination to the meat from the contents of the guts. Once all the rabbits have been opened up, I remove the guts along with the liver. Once the guts are out, I suggest that you dig a hole in a sensible place and bury the guts. Nobody likes to see piles of guts left lying about, and especially on shooting estates, as this will attract other unwanted vermin. People skin rabbits using various methods. Some hang them up to skin them, others skin them on a bench using knives to remove the skin. Some skin them and then start pushing legs through this way and that way before cutting them off. To be honest, most methods people use for skinning are way too slow if you're skinning any big numbers of rabbits. If you're like me, you'll want to do this job effective but as quick as you can, because skinning them is not my most favourite job, but it has to be done. If your buyers want fresh rabbits straight from the field, you will need to work quick so that they're still fresh when them get them delivered. The quickest and easiest way I found to prepare the rabbits is this. First of all, I remove the head and the legs with a meat cleaver. Once all the heads and legs are removed, I make an incision through the skin with a knife in the middle of the back. This is done to all the rabbits I am working with before I start removing the skins. Once all the rabbits have cut through the skin in the back area, then I start to remove the skins by placing my fingers in the split I made and pull either way. I will do this slower than normal so that you can see how this method works. Make sure that after the tail is removed that you ensure that the lower gut containing droppings and the bladder is removed. If you're unsure, simply cut through the membrane between the legs and have a quick check. Although I'm skinning these slower than normal for the benefit of the video, I hope you can see how effective and quick this can be. I will do a few more so you can see how the skinning method works and how easy it is compared to other ways. You can see now why all the rabbits must be headshot, so that no rabbits are bruised or contaminated with the contents of the guts. All rabbits going back into the human food chain must be first class condition, unmarked and prepared in the correct way. To sell rabbits to game dealers and other places like restaurants, you may require a game meat hygiene certificate and have a trained hunter's ID number. Training is given by the National Gamekeepers Organisation. This is done periodically throughout the year at different locations throughout the UK. This means you have been trained in the game meat handling and you can comply with the new meat hygiene rules. The course covers all game birds, all deer, ducks, geese, pigeons, rabbit, hares, squirrel and even rooks. The trained hunter's ID number and carcass label is requested by every restaurant now I go to before they will buy anything from me. These rabbits are now labelled before they go to the game dealers, stating where and when they were shot, notes on the condition of the animal at the time of death, any other reason for concern, and your trained hunter's ID number. All the smaller stuff I shoot does not go to waste. I strip all the nice tender meat off and bake them into rabbit and black pudding pies. The pies feed the family, and I also give some back to the farmers and the keepers. It's just a way of saying thanks for letting me work the way I do. That concludes this DVD. I hope you've enjoyed watching it and picked up some tips while watching it. Other Field Sport DVDs are available direct from my site, which is www.sh-pc.co.uk in the DVD sales section.